shared with you some of the ups and the downs that I went through in my probate business. Market crashes, shifts in my referral, attorney's focus, and everyone is going into survival mode. Go back to episode 1 and start there again. If you haven't heard the story, go ahead and listen to that first and then continue here. So the big question is this: how are ordinary agents just like us supposed to stand out in the overly crowded real estate space while living a great lifestyle without having to go broke or radically change what we're already doing? Probate is the answer, and this series will show you how. I'm Anthony Nitz, and welcome to The Probate Agent. Okay, so where I left it off was I was sharing how most of the attorneys that I was working with went either into the loan modification business and basically were no longer referring business like the good old days. And in fact, some of them were even disbarred, and a couple of them faced some jail time for unscrupulous practices. And it put me into a position where I suddenly had to figure out a new way to survive. But I was not ready to give up on the probate side of things, right? So now you have to start and ask yourself, what is the best approach? How do I go out there and get that business? And in any case, that the one-to-many approach is the best way to go. Think about it like this: you go to talk to an insurance person, right? And that insurance person, they're going to sit down with you. They're going to go over everything, and it's going to take an hour or two to explain everything to you. And finally you make a sale and they get paid a commission like we do as agents, right? Or the one-to-many approach. You can go to let's take it on a big scale, a big training seminar, right? And we've all been to those. And that trainer stands up there and they give some good information and gets you excited and everything. And for only this price, you can get at the back of the room what it is that I'm selling. And so at one time, that one person is speaking to many people at the same time and getting a certain number of them to purchase what they wanted them to buy, right? Making their dollar per hour value incredibly valuable. And it kind of worked the same way. I got to the point where I had to do a lot of work up front to get those relationships with those attorneys. But then after that, it was just kind of more of a maintenance mode where every once in a while I pop in, say hi, we go, go out for dinner or go play golf or something like that. And that worked great for 5 years. Okay. But they also had higher expectations. They also had higher demands too, right? I tried going direct to homeowners. That didn't work. Why? Because it's 1-to-1. And this was, to me, this is the one thing that I really was so painful for me, even as an agent, is when working with a buyer or working with a seller, is to sit down with them for 2 hours, 3 hours, drive around with the car from all day on Saturday, whatever, doing the presentation or the dog and pony show, if you will, because that's more of a one-on-one sale, like I said in kind of the insurance guy's example. So did I chase down executors? And sometimes I did that. I tried that a little bit. Chase down executors, because that's what some of the other trainers were saying to do. Write, these letters and drop off packages and do all this stuff. But here's the thing, is that it was a really poor odds of success. Again, it's a one-on-one thing, right? Or less. And, what it amounted to was basically, be spending a lot of money on letter campaigns, time on cold calling and hard sales tactics to get that executor to let me to get in front of them. Because if I got in front of them, my chances increased. But that was the big trick, was getting in front of them. And even to the point where you're stalking them. I had a situation where I was actually out in front of somebody's house for like 2 hours, 2.5 hours, waiting for that executor to show up. I was dead set. I'm getting that listing. I'm going to wait for that guy to show up. I'm going to, tackle him in the driveway and say, sign this listing agreement, executor. But the only people who showed up was the police, because one of the neighbors said some strange guy sitting out in a car for 2.5 hours. So that was, needless to say, an interesting event. But did that work? Did the chasing down the executors? No, that was pretty tough. Estate sale planners. I thought, gosh, okay, wait a minute. Estate sale planners. Those guys, they know when mom and dad have passed away. They got to get everything ready to sell. They got to sell off all those knickknacks and appliances and tchotchke stuff. And a couple things that I realized was that by the time the estate planner was involved, it was too late. Estate planners usually come as a referral from us or from their attorney, right? And so by then, chances are, in most cases, those people were already listed. Those homes were already listed. But in some cases, the estate planners, they knew what their position was, and they knew that they had a little influence. And so they could refer business. But I would tell you what, they were ruthless. They wanted huge referral fees. The ones that I dealt with. And so I said, that's not a sustainable model. And that's the other thing that I found was that there was actual turnover in the estate planner business. A lot of turnover. There's a couple, 2, 3, 4 maybe of solid, these guys have it down and they'll be doing this for a long time. But there's, a ton of other people who come in and say, hey, this is a good idea. Let's be estate planners. So I was like going, okay, what do I do? How do I, get in front of people that need my service, my expertise as a probate specialist, as somebody who understands the emotions and the tragedy of it all, whether it's, mom or dad not being able to live in their home that they've lived in for 30 plus years, the family home, or, somebody passing away, in some cases suddenly. Okay. And so I had to think about it. I said, well, I've got to put myself in the flow of the river. Okay. In the flow of the river. So where is all of this, flowing? Where are all these transactions and these people? Where are they going to, end up? And, for me, one of the things that came up was these seniors living facilities, or assisted living facilities. And, actually, as I started researching and I started, hanging out and talking and doing some networking stuff, I found out it was actually a pretty good option. But we had to be very careful because some facilities were very reluctant to give any kind of referrals. They didn't want to have an implied endorsement of this agent. Oh, you should use this agent. This agent messes everything up. And now they take on the liability of giving a bad referral, right? And so, but still, it was still a good option, still a good idea to make a relationship with those people in those facilities. And I was introduced to the moving coordinators. For large facilities, they have someone or several people in-house that will actually help people, on the outside, help coordinate their move, their transition. It's not just moving, like getting a truck, load stuff up and come over, but it's a transition, right? And that transition oftentimes includes how they're going to pay for the assisted living facility. Where does that come from? A lot of times it's the house, right? And so a good real estate agent is part of that thing, right? The smaller, lower income facilities, those types of referrals are done by the management directly. So they don't have like a separate staff that handles just the moving and stuff like that, and that's okay. But by connecting with these moving coordinators, it proved to be a good option. And even though in some cases they wouldn't promote me directly, sometimes they would, but in some cases they wouldn't, because like I said, the liability thing. Most of the time, they would still put me in contact with the homeowner or family members, even if they did it indirectly, right? Indirectly, like they might call me and say, "Hey, Anthony, you know what? These people asked me to have somebody call them," or Anthony, you might want to go check this out. Now, I don't know where that fits today in the whole HIPAA thing and all that stuff. I'm sure there's a lot more restrictions. And so, be careful about that. Back then, it was a little bit more loose. But still, these people are connecting you with these families. So there's a trick to working with these moving coordinators on it. And there's definitely a wrong way to do it. And there's definitely a right way to do it. In fact, like anything, there was a learning curve. I had to figure it out. It didn't take me long, though, because I had a good grasp on how to identify the needs of those individuals and how to get them eagerly on my side. When I say those individuals, I mean the moving coordinators. I wanted them on my side for obvious reasons, right? And, to learn those details, just visit theprobateagent.com and download our free report. And, and we'll cover that. If you go there now, at the time of this recording, the site is not finished being revised. So just check back, and when those reports are available, they'll be there for download. Anyway, once I figured that out, I was back up on top again. But here's the funny thing, was that very few of these referrals that I was getting were actually probates. They weren't even probates. You see, while I do still take probate referrals today, I decided to put myself right smack in the flow of home sellers long before they ever became a probate. And by doing so, I'm picking up most of the properties that are in trusts. This is before they die. Okay? There's no public records for this. There's no data source out there that can predict when this will happen. You just have to know how to put yourself in the right spot at the right time. See, it's expensive for someone to move into an assisted living facility. If the family wants a good quality of life for their loved one, the number one thing that they usually use to pay for it is what? It's their house, right? I mean, you get that, right? And usually they're in a hurry. Isn't that true? And oftentimes because the assisted living facility has a time frame that they must have the home sold in order to allow them to live there. So they can't leave it on the market endlessly in hope of squeezing every last penny out of the deal. Some facilities, they'll let somebody move in for a period of time and say, well, 90 days or 60 days or whatever, you have to have the house sold. They're tying it to the house, but they don't want to risk sitting there all for a long period of time and then having a market shift or something like that. And now they can't get their money from the house. Okay, so there's a time limit. There is a time limit, and there's urgency. But here's the problem, is if you're just a regular old agent, just like the tens of thousands of agents in your existing area, and you walk in, you try to get in with these moving coordinators, they're going to be courteous. They're going to listen to your pitch, and they're going to say it was a pleasure meeting you, and they're going to shake your hand and thank you for coming by. And they're going to take your stack of business cards. They're going to wave at you politely on the way out. And you'll never hear from them again. Never. Why? It's all about specialization. It's all about being a specialist. And so even though you can sell a house just like everybody else can, if you do not have a specialty, and I'm not talking about having designations tagged onto the back of your name on your business card. I'm talking about specialization, real specialization, like what we're talking about here, becoming the probate agent for the area that you're in. Guys, we're going to cover that in an upcoming episode. Take care.
Hey, thanks for listening. Please remember to subscribe right here where you're listening to us right now, and any of your other social media platforms. And leave feedback for me. It's really important to me and it helps us out. Do you have a question that you want answered live on the show? Go to theprobateagent.com to submit your question or even to get an opportunity to be interviewed. For my agent friends, you'll also find additional content and some freebies there that you can download right now. Until next time, let's put the pro back into probate.